Hi, welcome to Happy Tales. I'm Cheryl Rosenthal, Communication and Education Coordinator here at the Oshkosh Area Humane Society.
And I'm Joni Geiger, Executive Director.
And today we have a very exciting show for you. We're going to be talking with a representative from the Humane Society of the United States. This morning we have with us Allison Bodie. Is that correct?
That's correct, Allison Bodie.
You are the State Director for the Humane Society of the United States, known to those of us in the shelter business as HSUS. And we're going to talk about all the things that the Humane Society of the United States does for animal shelters and what effect you have in communities across the nation. So welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Joni and Cheryl. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk to you today. Thanks for the invitation.
So what exactly is your job? What do you do?
Sure. So I'm the Wisconsin State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. So I represent the state and work on animal protection bills at the state legislature, work with law enforcement when it comes to cruelty investigations or animal fighting operations or raids. And we engage our constituents here to get active for animals. We have about 225,000 members in the state of Wisconsin. So a lot of these folks are, contacting me regularly about concerns that they have and finding out how they can get involved in animal protection issues.
So you're not necessarily investigating every case that comes through? Do you oftentimes refer that back to local humane societies or local law enforcement, or does it always go directly to because the main headquarters is in Washington, D.C., correct?
That's correct, yeah. So in my personal job, I certainly act as a liaison a lot of times. So if people are reporting a case of animal cruelty or neglect, maybe a suspicion of an animal fighting operation, we certainly follow up with local law enforcement and give people the tools and resources to do that themselves and make sure that their local law enforcement is taking animal issues seriously. But sometimes if we do need to intervene with headquarters, we do, I might be a liaison with perhaps our investigations department or our cruelty department, animal fighting department, whatever it might be, so that on a national level we might be able to bring some resources to the table.
I also want to mention too that what you do for shelters locally. I think that, being a state director, obviously, you're a resource for us as well. So if we have questions or if we have some things that we're unsure of, again, that's something that we can contact you, because you're local, and get the answers based on that. So that's really a great referral for us as well, because shelters obviously really, there's so many things in shelter work, you know that, and obviously there's no point in reinventing some of the wheel here, and you guys are the wheel. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of your job is traveling throughout the state?
I do some travel, absolutely. So I might do shelter tours. We work with a Baker Trust and offer grants where we funnel thousands of dollars through Wisconsin shelters. So shelters here might apply for grants, and then I would go and do an interview with the director, see what's going on, maybe find out what the need is, and see if we can get some grant money their way. We've been really honored to serve as an advisory position with the Wisconsin Federated Humane Society for about 10 years. So again, kind of a consulting role or resource referral, whatever it might be. And on a national level, one thing that's really exciting is we've partnered with the Ad Council. And this, people might have heard of the Ad Council with all these great PSAs on Smokey Bears,
Oh, and Get Milk. Or Got Milk, everybody with the mustache. That was one of the earlier ones.
Yeah, I know the Smokey Bear with the, only you can prevent forest fires, and mind is a terrible thing to waste. And this is the first time they've ever partnered with an animal group, and they're doing a huge adopt a shelter pet drive. And yeah, the Shelter Pet Project is what it's called, and so the website is shelterpetproject.org, and they just have all these hilarious and very hip and fun commercials that we try to get on
to encourage people to adopt from shelters.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys are working to get some in the Oshkosh
absolutely.
area.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that, and you're right. It uses a lot of humor, and it's something I think that people get pretty excited about, and they see it and they think about it, and it kind of plants that seed for them, because I think sometimes people don't always look at it as a shelter for a resource for adoption, because obviously there's other things out there, but shelters have great pets, and that's been true time and time again.
Right, and that's the theme of the Shelter Pet Project messages, is that there's fantastic pets at shelters. It's not their fault at all that they're there, and just what a gem and what a find that they are. Yeah. We also do a lot of, in Wisconsin, we've done a lot of shelter trainings. So we'll put on we put on like a shelter boot camp, or we put on our disaster animal response team training so that shelter staff and community members can get trained to find out how they can respond to animals in disaster. I'm working with some emergency managers right now to get county plans to including pets in disaster planning, working with
So a lot
shelters.
of times, I think there's some people that think that the Humane Society of the United States somewhere has a huge animal shelter where they take in animals. And you don't have that.
We actually operate 5 different animal care sanctuaries throughout the country.
Really?
Yeah, so we're actually, if you combine all those animals, and then we do a lot of hands-on direct care with our, we have emergency response, and then we also have some veterinary mobile units that do spay neuters, that type of thing. We actually are the largest direct care provider of animals in the country.
That's
with,
pretty
with
cool.
some of these sanctuaries.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've got
yeah.
a big horse sanctuary in Oregon, Black Beauty Ranch in Texas, a big huge wildlife rehab center that was involved in the Gulf in Florida. So, yeah, so we do a lot of that, and a couple other things that I just jotted down here on my notes. We have a really fantastic program through our affiliate, the Humane Society Veterinary Medical Association, HSVMA, and these are trips that are taken with veterinarians and vet students around the country to provide no-cost vet care, so spay, neuter, and your basic vet care, vaccinations, et cetera, to animals in low-income areas. And what's kind of a funny thing about Wisconsin is that University of Wisconsin Vet School happens to send more students than any other in the country on
Wonderful.
these trips. Yeah, about a
Wow.
quarter of vet students all participate in our
That's
HSVMA trips.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So those are all wonderful things that the Humane Society of the United States does, all on the positive side of work that you're doing for the animals. And then there's always the cruelty cases that we all hear about. And what is HSUS's role in the cruelty cases, and what have you come across here in the state of Wisconsin as far as cruelty cases?
Yeah, well, we absolutely strike at the roots of the cruelty problem. So, while you find folks and so many others in the state are doing the day-to-day care of the animal sheltering world, which is such phenomenal and important work, we try to look at the root of the problem, like what's really happening here. And a lot of times it's the cruelty and neglect, and so we focus on laws that might be better. Oh, I'm envious now. Laws that might help, help address this issue. And work with law enforcement regularly. That's actually a big part of my job, is following up with law enforcement when there might be some reports of cruelty, neglect, or animal fighting. Here in Wisconsin specifically, probably the biggest thing that stands out in my mind is last year we worked with the Richland County Sheriff's Office and the district attorney to do an undercover investigation and help assist on a raid and the emergency sheltering of almost 300 animals that were taken from a cruelty case in Cazenovia. And yeah, it was...
And were those horses or cattle or cats, dogs?
Mainly dogs. There were also horses on the premises, some birds, pocket pets, and surprisingly one cat, but mainly dogs, almost 300 dogs. And so there were, for about 4 weeks, there was an emergency shelter that we set up with some other groups, and I was on site every day. It was amazing to see these animals come from...
and I'll just mention, we participated in that, Cheryl, and we were down there, and it was, I have to tell you, it was just absolutely amazing how well coordinated it was. I mean, that was just a huge operation, and to take that many animals and to, and we all know what that's like.
Right.
And these guys are scared and they're nervous, and it's very frightening. Some of the medical conditions were pretty horrific. And
so when this happens, you kind of call in area
rally the
shelters
troops.
and just anybody, everybody and everybody.
The organization involved, though, in this, in such a huge operation, I was very impressed. I mean, I really was. And of course, I think we took, I don't know, 12, 14 dogs probably, which was really pretty cool. And it was just a marvelous thing to see, just from an observation point. And then, of course, to know that you're helping those animals really, is good for your spirit. So
yeah, and what's amazing to me is, this was one operation that HSUS assisted in Wisconsin with these 300 dogs, and it seems like every week, every other week, our emergency response team is out in the field, doing some other animal rescues from hoarding situations, also natural disasters, fires, floods, puppy mill raids, animal fighting raids. So they are on the move and doing amazing work. Yeah.
How long of a time frame is there when, and maybe you can't answer that because each one I would imagine is different, but when you start with a suspicion of animal cruelty to actually seizing the animals that you did last year, what kind of time frame was that? Was it relatively quick, or is it something that moves rather slowly until you actually go in and can take the animals?
Yeah, this process, I mean, of course, everyone wishes it could be overnight. We could be right there. This process, you know, I don't know how typical it was, but we did hear a lot of complaints, actually from shelter directors who were, you know, kind of seeing firsthand some of these animals that were coming in. We were hearing from people who were visiting this facility and were just shocked and horrified at the conditions these animals were in. We did a lot of follow-up with the law enforcement, the sheriff's office, and then ended up working with the, like I said, the district attorney to do an undercover investigation. So that took a bit of time. You know, and then had to coordinate again with law enforcement how we would actually do a raid and a seizure. And then we wanted a criminal case to be really strong, so we also worked with groups on collecting evidence with a forensics, you know, forensics materials and that type of thing, and making sure that all of our responders were available. 300 dogs, of course, and emergency sheltering. So I don't know if I could say exactly how long it took, but it was certainly a process. But we wanted to do it right, and we wanted to make sure those animals were out of there and had
so you have to be
viable
organized.
options.
You just can't swoop in and say, okay, we're going to do this, because you have to go through all the legalities and make sure that you have everything in order.
Right, and we're always working as an agent for the law enforcement. So in this case, it was Richland County Sheriff's Office, and so we had to go by their protocols. Sure. Yeah, a similar situation was when we worked with the Department of Justice here, the Wisconsin DOJ. They sent, they sent some of their criminal investigators to an animal fighting investigation training that we held in Sheboygan. And we had animal control officers, USDA inspectors, these Department of Justice investigators, police officers, sheriff's departments, and they all came to this animal fighting investigation training. And 6 months later, based on that training, we were able to work with Rashera County on a huge animal fighting bust. About 150 fighting birds were seized. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was unbelievable. I was on site there too, and helped ban the birds that were being collected for evidence. But same type of thing. So that, you know, there's a process, and we're always working under the jurisdiction of who has the law enforcement.
So here again, you know, when you say animal fighting, to me, first thing that pops into my head is dog fighting. Sure. And so is bird fighting pretty common in Wisconsin? I always think of that something in the southern states rather than in Wisconsin, or is that something that's moving northward?
You know, I wouldn't know about necessarily a trend, but this was pretty shocking. Yeah, very big cockfighting operation here. This man was selling these birds, even internationally, sending them overseas.
You see that, They mail them.
And you know, one thing with animal fighting is it's far from usually one thing they're involved in. So this person, you know, had illegal firearms and lots of other, you know, there's gambling, and there's a lot of other illegal activities happening at animal fights that law enforcement is right to taking a high priority and getting these out of communities.
Well, and I think, you know, animal fighting anyways is just, it's kind of, you know, obviously people want to keep it hidden. Right. So general public doesn't necessarily recognize or think about it on a regular basis, because it's not something that people publicly talk about or discuss, or, you know, because it is illegal. And so you're right, Cheryl, as far as like most people think about animal fighting with dogs, but I mean, it's real, it happens. I mean, it's something that unfortunately all the states across the country are, and humane societies are dealing with on a regular basis. And so it's a pretty incredible, cruel sport, but it is there and it exists, and thank God, like, Humane Society of the United States is stepping up and, you know, helping out with some of those things. Yeah,
we actually offer a $5,000 reward to anyone coming forward with information that could lead to the arrest and conviction of animal fighters. And we have a national dogfighting tip line. It's 1-877-TIPS HSUS. And people can call, and again, we investigate all of these reports very seriously, and we've paid out lots of these rewards. Also, on a cruelty case aspect, with working with law enforcement, if there's ever, you know, a cruelty case where law enforcement's unable to find the perpetrator, we offer a $2,500 reward in cases. And we've actually been able to pay out two very recently in Wisconsin on some high-profile cases in Green Bay and Dunn County.
So, right, yeah, you guys helped us out a couple times, so it was really great.